How's it going, everyone? Today I want to show off how to install Fedora Linux from start to finish. Fedora Linux version 39 just released on November 6th of 2023, so that's the version I'll be showing off today. Fedora generally has a 6-month release cycle, so a new version generally comes out every 6 months. Before we begin, I just want to mention that all the websites I show will be listed in the description below. I also have a link for a recommended thumb drive if you do not currently have one. Anyhow, let's begin. So here's the Fedora project's website here. As you can see here, latest release is version 39. And if you click on this here, we're going to be going over the Fedora workstation today. So we can click on download now. And before I begin, let's just quickly go over the system requirements. Their system requirements page here is pretty bare bone, but it's also very straightforward. So as it mentions here, to have a good experience, hardware with a 40GB SSD disk and 4GB of RAM is recommended for Fedora workstation. However, it is possible to use hardware at lower specifications. So you could potentially use a mechanical hard drive, but it will be slower. And that also mentions that images are available for x86 or 64-bit processors, aka Intel and AMD CPUs. And then there's also the other architecture types for ARM processors. And the thing I do recommend is a machine with at least 2 cores. Otherwise, you're going to be in a pretty slow state without at least a dual core processor. So back to the download page here. You have a few options. If I scroll down a little bit more. So on the left-hand side, there's going to be the Fedora Media Writer, which I'll go over more in a little bit here. There is also the option of just downloading the ISO file itself. And then as you see here, there are the different platform types that you can select depending on the hardware that you are using. I just want to give a quick run through of what would happen if you were to download the ISO file. So I already pre-downloaded the one for Intel and AMD x86 or 64-bit systems. So one option would be to use a bootable drive utility such as Rufus, and you can download Rufus just by scrolling down and selecting the latest version for your platform in here. So in my case, I would download the Rufus 4.3.exe for the Windows 11 machine that I am on. With it downloaded, it is a self-executing application, so there's nothing that actually has to be installed. Now you could just open it from the downloads folder, however, I stashed it on my desktop here. And of course, one thing to mention is that you would need admin rights on your machine to do any of the methods I will be showing. So you can double click on Rufus. You'll get the UAC prompt, we'll just hit yes. And then with a USB thumb drive plugged in, I recommend at least an 8GB drive or larger to begin the process here. I would go over here, hit select, and then I can select the ISO image, hit open, and then generally speaking, you should be able to leave everything as is. And then you would just click start, and then you would just wait for it to finish, crunching along. And then when it's done, then you can begin with the next part, which I will show a little bit later on in the video. So for now, we can close out of this. Next, what I want to show is how to create a bootable thumb drive using the Fedora Media Writer. I already downloaded it, so I will fire it up here, which is in my downloads folder. And let me just double click on this. And yes for the UAC prompt. And I'm just going to close out of all of the web pages here and everything else that I may have open so that it's just the Media Writer that's popped up on the screen. We'll click on I agree and install. You can click show details if you want to see the magic that's happening. And then we can click on next and finish. And it should automatically launch the media creator here. And you do have 2 options here. You can either select the download automatically, or you can select an ISO file. So since we already pre-downloaded the ISO file, I could select it here. However, for the purpose of this video, I'm going to leave it checked as download automatically. Hit next. It gives you a release option here. We're just going to stick with the official editions here. And this does give you the drop down of if you want to select something other than the Fedora workstation, such as Fedora IoT or Fedora server. However, today we're just going to show off the Fedora workstation installation, and we will hit next. It also gives you the options for version selection. Since we are doing version 39, we'll leave that as is. It also gives you the option for the hardware architecture, so you can choose that here. Since I'm going to be installing this on a 64-bit Intel processor, I will leave this as is. And then ideally, you'll have the USB thumb drive already plugged in, and hopefully it is being recognized. So in this case, it is recognizing it automatically, so that's good. You do also have the option for the download to delete the download after writing. For the sake of this video, since I'm going to be nuking this computer's Windows 11 operating system to install this, I'm not concerned about this. However, if you are building this up on an alternative machine that is not going to have the operating system nuked, then you may want to go ahead and check this so that it does in fact get rid of it. For the sake of the video, I'll pretend as though we're not nuking this machine, so I'll just check that, and then we just click on write, and then now we just sit back and wait for the magic to happen. Just be patient. Depending on the speed of the USB ports that your machine has, it could take some time. And of course, it could take some time depending on the speed of the USB thumb drive that you have. If you end up going with the USB thumb drive that I recommend and you have relatively new USB ports, then it should go relatively fast. Now it's going to do a check of the data that is on the drive to make sure that everything is happy and not corrupted. All right, you should hopefully have received this little pop-up here. It says it's finished. And we can just click on finish here, and then we can just exit right out of this. Now, in many ways, this is kind of, in my opinion, one of the most difficult means of actually moving forward installing any operating system is actually figuring out which button is required to mash to get the machine to actually pop up with the boot order or boot devices menu. Some machines, it's F2, some it's F6, some it's F8. F9, F10, F12, or the delete key. If you were attempting this on a Microsoft Surface, then it's a button sequence of holding the power button down while also holding the volume up or volume down buttons, depending on the model of Surface. The best thing that I would recommend you do, if you do not know what the boot order key is, or boot device key, is to Google your machine's make and model, either the whole machine, or if it's a machine that you would put together yourself, then you would also just look up the motherboard manufacturer's website and the exact model of the motherboard that you have, and that should lead you down the path of understanding which keys you need to select to get it to boot from the thumb drive. Alright, so with the USB thumb drive plugged into the machine that I'm going to be nuking, I am going to do a reboot of the machine, and since this is a Lenovo machine, I know the key for this is the F12 key, so I will start mashing that. Not all Lenovo machines are the F12 key, so just keep that in mind. And here we are at the startup device menu, so I'm going to go down, a down arrow, down to the USB HDD, and I'm going to select this guy here, hit enter. You can leave it on the default if you want. You have 60 seconds to break out of this little loop here. If you do hit the up arrow, it will break the countdown and then it will allow you to select what you want here. For the sake of this video, I just recommend doing the up arrow to start Fedora Workstation Live 39, hit enter, and then just be patient as it reads from the thumb drive. And as we can see here, it is starting to load the data. And so by default, it is running what is known as a live environment, which means that the operating system is actually running off of the thumb drive at the moment in kind of a RAM cached state. And so technically speaking, you could run Fedora as is. However, my recommendation is to actually install it on the machine so that you have much better performance and you can actually install applications and packages and all that good stuff. So on the left-hand side, let's click on Install Fedora and just be patient as it reads from the thumb drive. And in this case, you would select the language and then your locale of your language here. I'm just going to leave it as is and we'll hit continue in the bottom right-hand corner. Note at the bottom it has a little exclamation and it mentions please complete items marked with this icon before continuing to the next step. And this also gives you the option of changing up your keyboard localization, and you can also change up your date and time localization. I'm going to click on the date and time one here, and then if you click on the map, it will give you the general area of where you selected instead of having to use the drop downs here. So you have region and you have city, and then you also have the option of network time up here, which I would just leave as is. It also gives you the gear option here, which gives you options into the network time servers or NTP server options. I'm not doing anything fancy, so I'm going to leave this as is. So we can just hit OK. And then in the top left-hand corner, I'm going to just click on Done. Next up is the section that we can't move forward until we select, and that is the installation destination. Automatic partitioning is currently selected, so let's pop this open. Ideally, it will automatically detect the hard drive that is in your machine. If you have multiple hard drives, you would see multiple drives showing up here, their model names and their disk sizes. You also have the option here of add a disk. Generally, this is for network disks that you would select. Since this is a general use setup, I'm leaving this as is. So we're just going to use the 500 gigabyte Samsung drive that is here. As for the storage configuration, I'm going to leave it as automatic. However, you can also choose different variations here, and you can also select to encrypt your data, in which case you would select a passphrase. Also on the bottom left-hand corner, there's also the full disk summary and bootloader. In case you're looking into more detailed information, we can just close this. Anyhow, to me, for a general use installation, I'm going to leave just everything as you see here, and we will click Done in the top left corner. And in this case, it's popping up with this installation options, warning us that we don't have enough free space to install Fedora. And that's because Windows 11 was already installed on it, and it sees that there's only 1.99 megabytes free for available use, and that's fine. What we'll do is we'll click on Reclaim Space, and now it opens up the partitions option here. And really the easiest thing to do is just over on the right hand side, you can just click Delete All. Now naturally, before I even click on any of this, this is a warning that if for some reason you didn't back up any data that you needed on the machine before we're going to install Fedora on it, do that before you continue on here. So you could hit cancel, and then you could just go ahead and use the power options up here and just do a restart, and then boot back into your Windows environment, and then back up the data you need, and then begin the process all over again here and follow along. So I'm going to do Delete All, and then I'm going to click on Reclaim Space. And now everything should be happy to where the Begin Installation button in the bottom right is now available and is not grayed out. So we can click on that. And then now it's just waiting for everything to be installed on the machine. So just be patient as it works its magic here. Give it about 5 to 15 minutes or so for it to install. So feel free to walk away and then come back and check on it. All right, if all went well, then we should see the complete here. And that says Fedora is now successfully installed and ready for you to use. Go ahead and reboot your system to start using it. Let's do Finish Installation. And then in the top right corner, go ahead and click on the little power button up here. Click on the power button once more and select Restart, and restart for this. And it should be booting up for the first time here officially on your hard drive. And now we are met with the Welcome to Fedora Linux 39 page here, which is a setup screen. So let's go ahead and click Start Setup. Location services I'm going to keep enabled. Automatic problem reporting, this is completely up to you. You can turn this off or turn it on, whichever you prefer to do. I'm going to leave it on, and we'll hit Next on the top right corner. I like to enable the third-party repository, so let's click on this, and now it's selected, and we can hit Next. If you did have an online account that you wanted to connect up to, these are your options here. For the sake of this video, I'm going to leave it without the online accounts activated. We'll hit Skip. So I'll just go ahead and type in Digital Scriptorium. Naturally, you would put in your name, and it would auto-generate a username, in which case you can then tweak the username as well if you don't want it to be your full name mashed together. You also have the option for an enterprise login if the machine is part of an enterprise. In this case, it is not, so we will hit Next. And then it's going to give you the password section here, so I'm just going to set a password. And it does give you a little security bar down here to show you how strong your password is. And then we will confirm the password one more time, and then we will hit Next. And we are now all done, so we can click on Start Using Fedora Linux. And then it does immediately pop up saying Welcome to GNOME 45. If you want to learn your way around, check out the tour. I'm not going to select the tour, I'm just going to hit No Thanks. Now one thing that should automatically happen is it should set the resolution to the native resolution of your monitor. In my case, because I'm using a Pi KVM, it can't automatically detect what the resolution of my screen is. So I'm going to quickly just adjust that right off the bat. So I'm going to right click on the background. I'm going to select Display Settings, and then I'm going to change the resolution to 1920 by 1080 to make this look better. Hit Apply and keep changes. I'll go into more of all these sections in a little bit here, but for right now I'm just going to close out of this. So now that Fedora is installed, let me go ahead and go through all the general GNOME GUI options here. So to begin, let's take a look at the top right corner here, and we'll click into this. So this is going to give you your power button, which we had to use earlier. to reboot out of the live OS and into the actual installed operating system. So of course you have the option to suspend, aka put it to sleep, restart the machine, power it off, or log out of your account. If we click out of that, there is the lock button here, which if I use it, it will lock the screen for us, and then you would have to sign back in the top right. You'll have your network section here. This machine only has a hardwired connection. However, if you have a wireless connection, then it would also show in the section. There is the power options, and by default it is set to balanced. However, there is a power saver mode, which decreases your performance, but obviously saves power. So if you're trying to really extend your battery, if you have a laptop, then you could select this. And then there's also the performance mode, which chooses maximum performance, but it's going to eat away at your battery if you have a laptop. I just like to leave it as balanced. It does also give you the option to click into the power settings, which we will go over more in a little bit. There's also the night light option, so this makes it so that it eliminates the blues. There's also the dark style, which I'm going to turn on because at least for my eyes, it's a little easier on my eyes to have everything essentially set to a dark mode. One thing to also show is that there is the volume bar here. So you move that to whichever volume you want. You can also click on this, which will mute it, and then click again will unmute it. If we click on the gear here, then again, it brings up the power section, which I'll just close out of that. And then one more time in the top right, you have this little guy here, which is the screen capture features, which is pretty snazzy. And it gives you all sorts of options. You can do the full screen. You can do a specific window if you have an application open or just another window open. The manual selection, so you can fine tune what you want to capture. And it also has the option for screen recording. And by default, it's on set screenshot. So then you would just click this guy right here and it would capture it. We'll close out of this. And that's all there is for the top right section. The next thing I will be doing is exposing the applications bar. And so in the top left corner here, we can click on this. And then now it shows us a search functionality here. And then also the general applications and options that are on this machine to start from left to right. So Firefox is installed by default. We can click on that. And so of course this is your default browser. It also comes with a number of bookmarks here that you can check out. And you can also set up Firefox. So if you do setup in seconds, it gives you the option to import bookmarks and history and passwords and all that good stuff. If you have those backed up and want to pull them over, we can just click on skip this step. This allows you to link Firefox Mobile together with your machine. We can click skip this step, and then we can click on start browsing. And that enables you to start using Firefox as a web browser here. We can click out of this. One thing to mention as well is if you don't feel like clicking the top left corner, you can also hit your Windows key, and that will also bring up the tray in the bottom here. Next up is going to be your calendar. So as you see here, it's general use calendar. You can select week, you can select month, all that good stuff. Feel free to dabble with it. Close out of that. Next is going to be your files, aka the filing cabinet here. And this is naturally the file system of your machine. So you have your desktop, your documents, your downloads, music, videos, templates, public, pictures. These are all for your profile on here. So if you had another user on here, then they too would have their own profile of data. And feel free to explore this here to find out more where other things are located. And there is also the other locations option if you really want to go through and check things over. This also with the other locations option also gives you a GUI readout of your drive and how much free space there is. So we'll close this. Next up is going to be the software center. And the thing I like to do right off the bat is if you look up here for updates, click on that. And then I'll expand this so it's full screen by double clicking the bar. And then I'm going to click on download and restart an update. It's going to say system is automatically restarting in 60 seconds, but let's go ahead and get it restarting right now. And of course, the big thing is just keeping your machine up to date. Linux is just as vulnerable as any other operating system, so I strongly recommend making sure that you keep it up to date with the latest and greatest packages if you can. I understand there are use cases where updates just can't be done, and you just have to go into the mindset of just making sure to super lock things down if you can. We'll sign back in, and let's go back to the software center. and back to updates. And we'll wait for it to load the updates here. And we'll click on download again as it's going to download all these. And if you notice also here, it shows what the updates are doing, and it's showing that it's updating from 45.0 to 45.1 and so on for all of the different applications that are here. And we'll just wait for this little loading bar here to move across. And this is the GUI option, aka the graphic user interface option of doing updates in Fedora. I will show the terminal options if you are unfamiliar. So now we can click on restart and update and just be patient here. We'll keep the install pending software updates checked and click restart and just be patient as it crunches along here. And we should be seeing this installing updates section here. And the thing to note is that these updates aren't necessarily patching up security vulnerabilities, but it could be bug fixes, optimizations, and new features. And we'll log in one more time. Let's head back down to the software section again here. Let's go back to updates one more time, and everything should be now up to date. If it's not, then you'll receive some more options here, and then just rinse and repeat what we did last time, and then come back here and just make sure everything is happy. Sometimes there's updates for the updates, so just throwing that out there. Let's go to Explore, and I'll maximize this. So the Software Center, as I call it here, is your kind of go-to place to install various different software packages. It also has all sorts of different games and stuff that you can find in here as well. So feel free to explore and download things to see how they work for you. If you go up to the installed section, then it should show you all of the applications and packages that are installed. And you can see them here if I scroll through here. And then we can click out of this here. If we go over to the dots here, that'll be the Show Apps button. We'll click on this. And this allows you to see your applications that are currently on here. Everything is pretty self-explanatory. You got your contacts. Fedora Media Writer is built right into the operating system, which is of course what we used in this video. Weather, clocks, maps, LibreOffice Calc, which is essentially Excel, LibreOffice Impress, videos, calculator, LibreOffice Writer, aka basically a Word or WordPad, document scanner utility. You've got your settings, system monitor, which is essentially like task manager. So we can click that just so you can see it. And so you can see your active processes, your resources, file systems, all that good stuff. We'll go back into Show Apps. Boxes is a virtual machine tool. You've got your terminal, which I'll show off a little bit more in a little bit. You have your utilities. Let's click into utilities. Disk usage analyzer, connections for network stuff, disks, so you can take a look at your disk, drives, characters, image viewer, document viewer, problem reporting, logs and fonts. You've got Rhythm Box, which is your media player, a built-in help section, a basic text editor, and Cheese, which is a photo application. And then there's the tour, which is the little thing that popped up when we first logged in here. So anyhow, let's go to settings, and then let's start at the very top. So I scrolled up here. So you've got your network settings, all self-explanatory. If I had a wireless card in the machine, then it would also show hopefully a wireless connection in there. There's a Bluetooth section if I had Bluetooth on this device, which I do not. There's an appearance section, and let me maximize this here. So the appearance section allows you to change the style between default and dark. So a default would have kind of a mix of dark and light themes. And then there's the plain dark mode, which is what I selected just to make sure that everything is dark. And then you also have options to change up backgrounds here. And if you'll notice on the left and the right, so there's the light theme for the background and there's the dark theme for it. So it's kind of cool that it actually shows two options for each theme here. So I'll just go ahead and change it up to this key background here just to make things a little interesting. On the back to the left, we have the notifications section. So this is where you can toggle on Do Not Disturb, lock screen notifications, and then you can alter your app notifications here. On the left-hand side, we'll click on search. And with this, you can fine-tune what the search capabilities are on the machine. And so you can fine-tune results that may have the various applications shown here. Feel free to dabble with this. Multitasking. This gives all sorts of very interesting features, especially for dual monitor uses. On the left, there is the apps. And then, of course, it shows all the different apps. And I'm not going to go through these, but there are options to tweak them and open them within this here. There's the privacy section. You can feel free to go through all this here. Online accounts, various online accounts that you can set up, sharing, And within sharing, you can alter the device's name. So if you wanted to change up the host name of the computer, then you can change it here. And then you've got file sharing, remote desktop stuff, media sharing, remote login to enable SSH. Back on the left, there's the sound option here. So it shows your output devices, volume, balance setting. You can also test. Feel free to tweak things in here. Over on the left to the power. So now in the power section, as I mentioned, we'll kind of go over it a little bit more here. So as I mentioned, I like to keep things at a balanced performance state. And then you can choose here for the screen to go blank, aka it turns the screen off. By default, it's set to 5 minutes. It also has the automatic suspend, which for a desktop machine, I recommend turning this off. And for the sake of this, I will just turn it off here and we can close out of that. But you can change up the delay down below. Power button behavior, so you can change up what the power button on your machine will do. In this case, by default, it's set to suspend. I'll leave it up to you to decide what you want to select in here. Many people select just power off instead of suspend. Back on the left, let's click on displays. And as you had seen earlier when I changed up the resolution, so you have the option to change up the orientation of your monitors, the resolution again, the refresh rate. Generally speaking, the resolution and refresh rates you shouldn't have to alter, as it should automatically detect what the native resolution and refresh rates of your monitor are. And then again on the left is the mouse and touchpad, so you can feel free to change things up here. Keyboard options, generally you would have tweaked a lot of these during the beginning installation portion. Printers, if you have any printers, then you can add them here. And then you would just click unlock and go through the whole process there. Removable media, this is basically stating what would you do with these various things. So if you put a CD in, it's going to ask you what you want to do. However, you can change them if you uncheck never prompt, and then you can change it to do whatever you want here. But we'll leave this as never prompt and leave that by default. Color, so these are color profiles for the monitors. I'll leave this as is. However, you can certainly tweak your stuff however you like. Region and language. So again, this is something that you would have set up earlier. However, if you need to alter it, you can do it here. Accessibility. This gives you general accessibility options. If you need to tweak them here, we'll scroll down so we see more options. Users. So it should show your current user here. And one thing to note is that there is the option to do automatic login. However, by default, it does not have automatic login set, so that every time you reboot or shut the machine down and it comes back up, then you would have to manually put your password in. However, automatic login would bypass that whole process and immediately log you right into the account. You can also add another user here. Default apps, so you can choose what you would want for web stuff. So if you have another web browser, then you could change it here. Mail, if you have a mail application, you'd be able to change it. Same goes for all the different application types here. Date and time. So again, this would have been stuff that you would have for the most part set during the initial setup. However, you may want to change the time format, and you may want to use the automatic time zone, which does require location services enabled and obviously internet access. And then you can change up your clock and calendar stuff here. And then finally, we have the about section. And this is one other area where you can also change up your host name of your machine here. And then this gives you a general rundown of your hardware. And you can click on system details to see even more hardware related stuff. And we can close out of this. And then again, there is software updates. If you didn't use the software center, you can click on this and it just opens up the software center to the update section right here. And we'll close out of this. And we can close out of the settings portion here. We've got that great background going on. All right, lastly, let me just show off the terminal real quick. So we'll go to show apps, and you could type in terminal up here if you wanted to, or you can hunt it down manually. So the first thing I just want to show real quick is, let's say that you don't want to use the software center for doing your updates. Now, one thing to note is that Fedora Linux uses the DNF package manager instead of the apt or apt package manager. So if you are familiar with Ubuntu or Debian based Linux distros, then it may be a little different. So to do updates with Fedora, let's type in sudo space DNF space update and hit enter. It's going to ask us for the password for our account. Type it in now, hit enter, and then it's going to check and download any updates here. And in this case, there were no updates, so it just says nothing to do, complete. And one thing I just want to also show for anyone who is not used to dabbling in Linux land, if you need to try to figure out what the IP address of your machine is, then just type in IP space address and hit enter, and I'll go ahead and maximize this. And then this is how you can find the IP address of your device. And of course, depending on the amount of network adapters, wireless adapters, all that good stuff, you may have different sections here. So in this case, this is my wired NICs IP address. So I'll just close out of this. So now with the general overview that I showed off complete, I always recommend people feel free just to dive into it, scope things out, feel free to explore. Anyhow, that's all you need to do to install Fedora Linux from start to finish. I hope you found this video to be useful. If you did, please like it and subscribe to my channel to keep up to date on my latest and greatest project videos. If you haven't checked out my channel before, I invite you to look it over. I have lots of interesting projects and tutorial videos with many more to come. Anyhow, until next time, take it easy.